"I don't date widows," he said on a blind date. Moments later, life taught him a lesson. The words hung in the air like shattered glass, sharp and cutting. "I don't date widows," Marcus said, his voice casual, as if he'd just commented on the weather. Across the table, Elena's hand froze halfway to her coffee cup, her breath catching in her throat. She hadn't even mentioned her past yet. Someone had told him, and just like that, what was supposed to be a fresh start felt like a door slamming shut in her face. Before we dive deeper into this powerful story of judgment, loss, and unexpected redemption, please take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to Trillion. Air in love for more stories that touch the heart and change perspectives. Elena Martinez had agreed to this blind date reluctantly. It had been 3 years since Daniel's death, 3 years since the car accident that had turned her world upside down. Her sister Rosa had been persistent, insisting that it was time, that Daniel would have wanted her to be happy again. So Elena had said yes, had put on the pink dress that made her feel a little brave, and had walked into this cafe with her heart protected by walls she'd carefully constructed. Marcus Bennett sat across from her, impeccably dressed in his light blue shirt, his posture confident, almost too confident. He was handsome in that polished, professional way, the kind of man who knew his worth in the dating market. He worked in finance, drove a luxury car, and, as Elena would soon discover, carried judgments as heavy as the watch on his wrist. The first 10 minutes had gone smoothly enough. They'd talked about work, about the city, about nothing particularly deep. Then Rosa's friend who'd set them up had apparently texted Marcus some background information, and everything changed. "So I heard you're a widow," Marcus said, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed, as if he were conducting a business evaluation rather than getting to know a person. "I'm just going to be honest with you, Elena. I don't date widows. Too much baggage, too much emotional complexity. I'm looking for someone who can start fresh with me, you know? No ghosts in the relationship." Elena felt the familiar sting of tears behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She'd heard variations of this before, whispered judgments from people who thought her grief had an expiration date, from men who saw her wedding ring tan line as a red flag, rather than a testament to a love that had been real and beautiful. "Ghosts," she repeated quietly, her voice steady despite the pain blooming in her chest. "You think my late husband is a ghost haunting my life?" Marcus shrugged, oblivious to the cruelty of his words. "I'm just saying I want someone who's fully available emotionally. Someone who's not comparing me to a dead man." Elena stood up, dignity holding her spine, straight. "You know what, Marcus? You're right. You shouldn't date widows. Not because we have baggage, but because we know what real love looks like. We know what it means to show up every day for someone, through sickness and health, until death actually does part us. And we sure as hell know the difference between a man worth our time and someone who isn't." She grabbed her purse, ready to leave with her head held high. When Marcus's phone rang, his mother's face flashed on the screen. He answered with an irritated sigh. "Mom, I'm kind of in the middle of something." His expression changed in an instant, all the casual arrogance draining from his face like water through a sieve. "What, when?" "Is he? I'm coming right now." Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. His hands were shaking as he tried to gather his things, his phone clattering onto the table. "My dad," he said, his voice cracking. "He's had a heart attack. They're at Memorial Hospital. I have to—" "Go," Elena said immediately, her own hurt momentarily forgotten. "Go to your family." She watched him rush out, stumbling slightly in his panic, and something in her chest shifted, against every instinct, telling her to walk away from this man, who'd just wounded her. Elena found herself following him to the parking lot. "Marcus, wait!" She caught up to him as he fumbled with his car keys, his hands shaking so badly he dropped them twice. "You can't drive like this. Let me take you." "I'm fine," he insisted. But his pale face and trembling hands told a different story. "No, you're not. And I know what it's like to get a call like that." She gently took his keys from his hand. "I also know what it's like to lose someone because you didn't get there in time. Please let me help." The drive to Memorial Hospital was silent, except for Marcus's ragged breathing. Elena navigated the traffic with practiced calm, the same calm she'd learned in her own journey through crisis and loss. She'd made this exact drive 3 years ago, her sister gripping her hand while someone else drove, racing to see Daniel one last time. They hadn't made it. When they arrived, Marcus bolted from the car before it had fully stopped. Elena parked and found herself walking into the emergency waiting room, unsure why she was still here, why she felt compelled to stay, for a man who'd dismissed her so callously an hour ago. She found Marcus in the hallway, his mother crying in his arms while a doctor spoke in low, serious tones. She heard the words stable condition, emergency surgery. Next few hours are critical. She saw Marcus's face crumple, with fear and relief and guilt all at once. Elena stayed in the background, getting coffee for his mother, finding tissues, making quiet phone calls to notify other family members, doing all the small things she remembered needing when her world had fallen apart. She didn't do it for recognition or gratitude. She did it because she knew what it was like to be in that waiting room, counting minutes, bargaining with God, feeling utterly alone even when surrounded by people. Hours passed. Marcus's father made it through surgery. The crisis that had seemed world-ending slowly shifted into cautious hope. As the adrenaline faded, Marcus finally noticed Elena sitting in the corner of the waiting room, exhausted but present. He walked over slowly, his earlier confidence replaced by something raw and human. "You stayed," he said, his voice hoarse. "After what I said to you, after how I treated you, you stayed and helped my family." Elena looked up at him, seeing someone different than the man who'd sat across from her in the cafe. Tragedy had a way of stripping people down to their essentials, revealing who they really were beneath the surface judgments and practice personas. "I stayed because I know what this feels like," she said simply. "I know what it's like to be terrified of losing someone you love, and I wouldn't wish that feeling on anyone, not even someone who hurt me." Marcus sank into the chair beside her, his head in his hands. "I'm so sorry. Elena, what I said to you was cruel and ignorant," and his voice broke. "Sitting here thinking I might lose my dad, realizing my mom might become a widow, it put everything in perspective. How could I have been so callous? How could I have reduced your experience to baggage and ghosts?" "Because you didn't understand," Elena said gently. "And maybe you needed to come close to that edge yourself to realize what it really means." They sat together in the fluorescent-lit waiting room, two strangers brought together by chance and transformed by crisis. Marcus talked about his father, about the distance that had grown between them over the years because Marcus had been too busy, too focused on his career and his perfect life plan. Elena listened and shared her own story, about Daniel, about their 5 years of marriage, about learning to live again after loss. "He wasn't a ghost," Elena said, her voice steady and sure. "He was a real person who loved me fully, who taught me what I deserved in a relationship. Losing him didn't fill me with baggage, it filled me with gratitude for having experienced something so profound. And yes, it means I know what I'm looking for now. I know the difference between someone who sees me as a project to fix and someone who sees me as a person who's been broken and rebuilt herself into something stronger." Marcus nodded, tears finally sliding down his cheeks. "I've been dating like it was a transaction," he admitted. "Looking for the perfect resume, someone who fit my checklist, someone who wouldn't complicate my neat little life. But sitting here facing the possibility of real loss, I realize I've never actually let anyone in. I've never been vulnerable enough to truly love someone or be loved in return." The night stretched on, and somewhere in those quiet hours, something shifted between them. Not romance, not yet, perhaps never, but understanding. A recognition of shared humanity, of the ways people can surprise you, can grow, can transform when life teaches them lessons they desperately need to learn. When the doctor finally emerged to say that Marcus's father was stable and asking for family, Marcus's mother embraced Elena like she was part of them. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for bringing my son here, for staying with us." As dawn broke outside the hospital windows, Marcus walked Elena to her car. The world looked different in the early morning light. softer somehow, full of possibility. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Marcus said, "and I don't expect another chance. But I want you to know that you taught me something invaluable tonight. You showed me what grace looks like, what strength really means. My father's still here because you drove me safely when I couldn't, because you thought of his well-being over your own hurt feelings. That's the kind of person I should have seen from the beginning." Elena smiled, tired but genuine. "Maybe this is exactly what was supposed to happen. Not a love connection, but a life lesson. For both of us." "Will you let me stay in touch?" Marcus asked. "Not as a date, but as, I don't know, as someone trying to be a better person who'd like to learn from someone who already is." "I'd like that," Elena said. They didn't end up together romantically, but that blind date became something more valuable than either of them could have imagined. Marcus's father recovered, and Marcus used the experience to rebuild his relationship with both his parents, to reevaluate what he wanted from life and love. He stopped looking for perfection and started looking for connection, for authenticity, for people who'd weathered storms and emerged with wisdom. Elena continued her journey forward, confident now that her past wasn't baggage to apologize for, but foundation to build upon. She eventually did find love again, with someone who saw her history not as a complication but as proof of her capacity for deep, enduring commitment. But both of them carried that night with them, a reminder that judgment is easy, but understanding requires us to step into another's shoes, to face our own fears, to recognize that every person's story has weight and meaning, beyond our limited perspective. Sometimes life teaches us lessons in the most unexpected ways. Through the people we dismiss, through the crises that strip us bare, through the moments when we're forced to choose between our ego and our humanity. The question is whether we're willing to listen, to learn, to let those lessons transform us into someone wiser, kinder and more open to the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of human connection. If this story touched your heart, or made you think differently about judgment, loss or second chances, please like this video, share it with someone who needs this message today, leave a comment about your own experiences with unexpected lessons, and subscribe to Trillion. Air in love for more stories that remind us of our shared humanity and the power of empathy to change lives.